Hi guys, this is Robin. I wanted to talk about the amount of time involved in the elimination process of letting go of a body image disorder, eating disorders, and the whole diet concept. And many people think that it just takes time. Well, there's something very relative about that time. And it has a lot to do with how desperate you are to change. If you're not miserable, if you're not desperate, it's going to take a long time before you really are willing to let go of the behaviors that you really like or that keep you secure and that you've used to define your confidence. You know, how long is it going to take for you to let go of the parameters you use as a comparison you're using against your body to know if it's ideal or not? In other words, what parameters are you using that you're comparing your body to that is what's driving you to diet, to lose weight, to look better, blah, blah, blah. You know, how long is it going to take for you to get rid of those parameters? Well, it's enough attempts at trying to get to that level and realizing that it's not a realistic parameter. There comes a point where you keep on running into a wall and it never ends up working or fixing anything, and you get frustrated, and then you realize the solution you're doing doesn't work, and then there's a level of desperation because you can't stand doing it anymore, and then you quit. So the process involved with that is relative to how desperate you are. So if you're not miserable enough, it's not over yet. You know, the sooner you get to the point where you are desperate to where you can't live another day in the craziness of dieting and body image and food control, the more insane you are and aware of that insane you are, usually there's more desperation involved, which means the change can be quick. So, again, the whole time involved with how long does it take for someone to really end this type of behavior, that is a relative statement based on how miserable and, you know, how miserable and desperate you are in getting rid of that part, and how open you are to change. This process takes a lot of humility. A lot of people keep this type of behavior because there's too much pride involved. Their identity is wrapped up in this whole concept of gaining and losing and dieting and giving themselves freedom to eat whatever they want. There's a lot of pride and ego, and there's not a whole lot of submission and admitting and taking responsibility. It's very easy to blame everybody else and have all these excuses for why it's not working for you. But one thing that happens as you fail over and over and over again is it's hard to continue to blame the same thing over and over again. And eventually the only thing left is you. And at that point you're usually pretty desperate, and the humility of admitting where you are really the problem and the only solution can happen through a change in your mind. When you get to that point, there's a lot of humility in making that change and being desperate enough and humble enough to be able to go through what it takes physically to get over an addiction, and emotionally to get over an identity crisis, and to let go of an identity that is full of pride and ego and fear and criticism and all sorts of things like that. Yeah, humility, desperation, and a willingness to feel vulnerable. When you're there, it doesn't take time at all. It's actually a very quick decision, and once the decision is made, it's like you just go and you don't turn back. It's hard to turn back once you've really made a decision. And it's also hard to turn back if you don't transfer the addiction to something different, if you focus in on, where the source of the problem was with your image, with your identity, if you really get into going back into authenticity, you're less likely to transfer your behavior to something different. So just a little bit on, how long is this going to take? Everybody who asks that, I say, well, that depends on how desperate you are and how much you really want this change and what you're willing to go through the elimination process. And, the amount of time it takes for everybody is just very unique. So I never put a parameter on how long it should take because it's totally dependent on the person's willingness to change and desire to change. If you really don't want to change, it's not going to work. Or you're not going to be willing to go through what it's going to take until you're desperate. So first off, don't criticize how long it's taking you, because it is a process of awareness and then elimination. And so if you're not aware of something, how can you eliminate it? And you really have to be forgiving with you just have to be forgiving of yourself and your mistakes. And it's not a perfect world, and it's not a perfect process. And if you kind of get over that or realize that and then get over it, you're more likely to navigate and take risks with this process, meaning going into vulnerability. That's a risk. You're more willing to take that risk if you are aware and okay with the learning process, which is, the process of, what's the word? It's like learning from your mistakes. That's really what this is about, is a learning curve process. It's not a memorizing process. So, all right, well, have yourself a good day.